Welcome to the shootout. I am Steve Jaco talking with Charlie O'Connor. Charlie, you spoke to Flyers general manager Danny Briere last week for a Diehard article on PHLY. If you're not a diehard, what the heck are you doing? Sign up to become one so you can read amazing content like this from Charlie. And I wanted to discuss the two biggest topics of interest to Flyers fans at all time, much to the annoyance of Rick Tocchet at times, Trevor Zegras and Matvei Michkov. And before we get to the bane of Rick Tocker's existence, Matvei Michkov talk, let's talk Zegras first. And specifically, I wanted to discuss where the Flyers are in regards to a contract extension, because this is an issue that I think is starting to creep up on Flyers fans' minds as we hit the half point of the season. And he's still over a point per game pace.
Yeah. I actually did an article a few months ago about the possibility of re-signing Zegras and also about like what it might cost depending upon when they sign him. So if you're a diehard, go back and check that out. If you're not, become a diehard, go check it out. But this particular interview, I did ask Danny Briere where the Flyers were at in terms of, their view of whether it was smart to negotiate with him now, whether they were going to wait until the summer, because they obviously want to keep him. They're very happy with Trevor Zegras. Everyone's very happy with Trevor Zegras. And Briere, I thought the most telling part of his answer was that he said, we're not opposed to negotiating in season. He said that some teams don't do that. We're open to it. To me, you don't say that unless you are interested in the idea of locking a guy up mid-season. Now, let's not say it's going to happen. Maybe the two sides are way apart on the Zegras side's asking for a ton. The Flyers don't think he's worth that, and they end up having to go to the summer. But that answer struck me as a little bit of a tell. And Briere made it clear, look, I don't negotiate through the media. That's not my style. But it was just a little bit of a tell that they just might be talking, and we might see a contract extension before the end of the actual regular season.
This is such a great position to be in after the trade they make, where they're kind of buying low on him, and then he's just had the season he has to this point, and also just the fire he's shown, and just the man seems like a flyer. We've all been delighted by the results, but with all of that considered, I think one of the big things when they traded for him, they were wondering if he might be a center, which is the big position of problems for this team moving forward, and he's been more of a hybrid wing to this point. And what did Briere have to say in regards to that position for Trevor Zegras?
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting answer because he didn't take it in the direction I thought he was going to take it. Rather than say, I think he's a wing, or no, we're still going to develop him as a center, he basically was like, it doesn't matter to me. His view is that Zegras is playing really well on the wing right now in this hybrid role, and he doesn't see any urgency to rush him back to the middle just because the Flyers have a long-term need in the middle. His view is that, hey, he's thriving right now on the wing with Christian Dvorak. Why would we mess with that? That would be insane. Let's keep the pairing together in this hybrid role. Briere mentioned that he played a hybrid center role when he was with Buffalo. He mentioned that he really enjoyed it. He said, seems like Zegras is enjoying it as well. But then he noted that he believes that Zegras can still play center, and that's the great part of it. So it's interesting here that, like, he's not shutting the door on him being a center. If anything, he's like, yeah, we know he can play center, but right now he's playing better at wing, and we're not going to push him back to center just because we feel like we need a 1C. We're going to keep him at the position where he's doing the best at. Now, I get why fans want him at center, because they look at the future depth chart. They look at the logjam on the wing, and they're like, well, that would be a lot easier to solve if Zegras was a 1C. Then you don't have to spend big assets to try to get a 1C, or spend every draft pick every year drafting to try to luck into a 1C. Or you don't have to worry about trading away a wing. You don't have to worry about moving like a Bobby Brink because you don't have enough space for him, because Zegras is suddenly a center and not one of the wings. So I get why the fans want it to happen. It just doesn't seem like Briere shares that urgency, and his view seems to be that, yeah, in the next couple of years, it'll work itself out, because while we do eventually need to get a 1C, it doesn't seem like Briere thinks that they have to do it now. He feels like they can wait it out and see how things develop.
Yeah, especially this season where they're just trying to show progress and take a step forward and not necessarily have like lofty expectations for the team. Now, the logjam at the wing is really interesting though, because we're seeing Denver Barkey up with the team right now. Bobby Brink, also similarly sized kind of guy right there. You got some shorter guys. And Tyson Forrester, until Tyson Forrester comes back, it's not really a huge deal about having maybe this logjam, but When he gets back and then when's Porter Martone is here, this is going to be a huge issue for this team.
Yeah, that I think is the big thing. And Briere, I think this was an answer where he kind of dodged a little bit because his answer basically was, well, nobody's ready yet. So right now it's fine, which is kind of true. I'm Denver Barkey's now up, but he's the only one. Porter Martone's still in college. Alex Bump is still down in the minors. And as you mentioned, Tyson Forrester's injured. So it's not something that they need to resolve right now. But it's coming. Like it's coming real quick because Martone, there's a good chance he's going to play games for the Flyers at the end of this season. Denver Barkey sure looks NHL ready right now. Alex Bump is close. Like they have a lot of wings that are top 9 ready or top 9 caliber that within the next calendar year are going to be looking like they should be in the NHL or looking like they should be getting major roles in the NHL. So I thought this was a little bit of a dodge, but I also think Danny did show his cards a little bit by basically saying, like, hey, for years we had a deficit at center. We didn't have any centers. Now we have a lot of wings. Maybe we could use the wing surplus to fill the deficit at center. Now, obviously, it takes two to tango. He can't just snap his fingers and make a trade. But based on his answer, it seemed pretty clear like that's what he's hoping to do. Now, whether he can ultimately pull it off, that remains to be seen. But it does seem like his answer was, look, not a problem right now. We're just going to keep going. But eventually, yeah, we're probably going to cash in on one or two of these wings to try to resolve positional needs elsewhere, with an obvious positional need being center.
This is a classic good problem to have right here when you have a surplus of talented guys at the wing that you can deal out and, figure out some other positions from. Well, on the wing front, we got to talk about Matvei Michkov because, much to Rick Tocchet's chagrin, it just will not go away. All the talk about Matvei Michkov. And, Michkov, his production's down, his minutes are down. He doesn't seem to be clicking like he was last year. And, Briere had, I thought, some interesting comments about Michkov. What did Briere have to say about Matvei Michkov?
Yeah, I mean, I straight up asked him, do you still see Mishkov as the important piece, as like the key piece that he was presented as for a long time for the Flyers? And he said, yeah, we still see him as an important piece. I thought the interesting part of this answer, the most interesting part of this answer, was that basically Briere looks at it as if he's getting 13, 14, 15 minutes a night, that's fine. He doesn't feel like that is going to hurt Mishkov's development. He basically said, look, if he was playing 6 or 7 minutes a night, yeah, I'd have a problem with that, implying like, yeah, if that was the case, I might step in and tell Rick Tocchet, hey, you got to give him more minutes. But he doesn't see a big developmental difference between Michkov getting 13, 14, 15 and Michkov getting 16, 17, 18, 19. So as long as Michkov is getting top 9 usage, as long as he's playing on the power play, he's not going to tell Rick Tocchet, you got to give him first line minutes as long as he's getting top 9 minutes. And it seems like that's where Briere's coming from. It's like, look, he doesn't feel like Tocchet has to play Michkov as the superstar Bedard Celebrini type. Look, it'd be cool if he was, and if Michkov was earning the minutes at Tocchet's eyes, I don't think Briere would have a problem with it. But he's not going to tell him, you got to use him like a first liner. As long as he's getting, a bare minimum of top 9 minutes, which Briere's like, look, he's getting that. He's not going to step in and say like the coach is doing something wrong. Also, he noted that, look, Michkov isn't playing his best hockey right now, so that obviously plays a role as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a big comment here is, when you asked him, you said, what does he have to do to get a bigger role? What does he have to do to get those minutes? And that's a big thing with Rick Tocchet in general is, and I think this is a lot of concern on the fans' end, where they hear that Rick Tocchet is very much a win now coach. He's a guy who's concerned with winning and maybe not so much the development of certain guys. So, what did Briere have to say in regards to earning more of those minutes or getting a bigger role?
Yeah. This was, I think, the thing that got fans online very frustrated. From what I gathered on social media, I asked Briere that, and his answer was, "Look, he's got to earn it." And obviously, he then did specify exactly what he has to do to earn it. I wouldn't necessarily expect him to. That's more of a Tocchet question than a Briere question. It was mostly like, look, he's got to earn it in the eyes of his head coach, the guy who makes the decisions, and he's not going to tell Rick Tocchet what he has to do in terms of usage, at least in terms of like small picture stuff. Again, like 15 minutes versus 18 minutes. But the big thing that jumped out at people was when Briere responded with, what does he have to do? Well, I think next offseason is going to be a critical one for Michkov because that answer seemed to mean like, hey, don't necessarily be expecting this guy to see a dramatic boost in usage until next season when he has a summer to really work himself into better shape. It obviously brought up the conditioning issue that's been discussed ad nauseum throughout Flyers world for the last 3-4 months. So that seemed to imply that like Michkov may not see significantly more minutes the rest of the way until he's able to have that big offseason that they were hoping he was going to have last summer. Fans aren't going to love that, but that was the answer. The answer was, hey, it might have to come. It might have to wait until next year. It may have to wait until they feel like he's in better condition and is able to, gain the kind of separation in plays that they want to see him gain in order to get the kind of minutes that Michkov surely wants as a player who wants to be viewed as one of the best in the league at some point.
Yeah, the separation's a big thing. He doesn't have the space to work this year as he did last year, and that has been a problem for him so far. And the conditioning thing keeps coming up for good reason. So I guess to be continued on that front. But Charlie, some great info from that interview with Danny Briere there, and this is all the great stuff you can get if you're a diehard. So sign up to be a diehard today if you haven't already. And that is all the time we have today. But thank you for watching the shootout. Make sure you're hitting that like button, okay? And we'll see you all on Sunday.